The spoon trembled in her small hand, light catching on the silver curve. 8-year-old Clara Monroe lifted it halfway to her lips, steam curling around her face like breath from another world. She hesitated. The broth quivered in the bowl, golden, thin, alive with heat. "Mom," she whispered to the vapor, "I'm going to taste this for both of us, so you can taste it through me." The first sip was barely a breath, just enough to touch her tongue. Then the tiniest sound escaped her, a fragile sigh, half relief, half disbelief. Across the marble counter, Daniel Monroe, her father, made a sound that was part sob and part laugh. His tailored shirt was wrinkled. The tie hung loose, like grief had pulled the life out of him. Beside him stood the new maid, Lena Walker, 23, dressed in a red uniform and white apron. Her hands were clasped around an old wooden ladle, the handle polished smooth from years of use. She didn't move, didn't speak. She simply let the quiet fill the room. "It needs salt," she said finally, voice calm as warm water. Clara blinked up at her. "It's good," she murmured. "It tastes like being held." "That's exactly what it's supposed to taste like," Lena replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "My grandmother used to say good food should feel like someone loves you enough to feed you." For a moment, time softened. The kitchen lights, the autumn air pressing against the glass, the faint ticking of the wall clock. Daniel turned toward the window to hide the tears gathering in his eyes. On the counter behind Clara lay the evidence of the battle they'd been losing. Untouched meals, medicine bottles, a feeding tube coiled like a snake, 2 weeks of refusal of a child shrinking away from life. And now, one single spoonful had broken the silence. No one spoke. No one dared to. But something unseen shifted in the room. The smallest tremor of hope, fragile as the steam rising from the bowl. 2 weeks earlier, the Monroe estate had been a house made of glass, beautiful, cold, and hollow. Not long ago, it had echoed with laughter. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon drifting up from the kitchen every Sunday morning. That was before Elena Monroe, Clara's mother, collapsed one March afternoon and never came home. For a while, Daniel and Clara had kept the motions of living. School, breakfast, polite words that broke apart in silence. Then came Elena's birthday, the day Daniel thought he could work through, and the day Clara tried to bring her mother back with a pan and a dream. He had found her standing on a chair at the stove, tears sliding down her cheeks as smoke rose from a blackened slice of French toast. "Mom always made it perfect," she cried. "I can't even make toast right. If I were better, maybe she wouldn't have left." After that morning, Clara stopped eating. At first, Daniel thought it was shock. He called therapists, doctors, specialists, people who spoke in words like coping, trauma, recovery curve. They came and went with clipboards and sympathy. They weighed her, charted her, coaxed her, threatened her. Nothing worked. Within 10 days, she had lost nearly 15 pounds. Her cheeks sank. Her eyes grew too large for her face. Even the house seemed to shrink around her. When the feeding tube went in, she pulled it out that same night. When the hospital suggested readmission, Daniel refused. He couldn't bear another room that smelled of bleach and surrender. The agency sent staff, nurses, companions, housekeepers, 7 in total. None stayed longer than 3 days. The air in the mansion was too heavy, the silence too loud. On the 14th morning, a new car stopped at the iron gate. From it stepped a young woman in a red cotton uniform and white apron, her hair tied back neatly, a small suitcase in one hand. Lena Walker, age 23. She had been a culinary school graduate once, the kind who dreamed of opening a small restaurant that smelled of rosemary and bread. But dreams cost money, and her grandmother's hospital bills had swallowed every dollar. Now that grandmother Evelyn Brooks was gone, leaving behind a wooden ladle and a memory. "Never forget," Evelyn had said, pressing the smooth handle into Lena's palm the night before she died. Sometimes people need feeding in ways they don't understand. Feed the soul first. The rest will follow. When the agency called about the Monroes, Child not eating, mother deceased, crisis household, pay generous. Lena had felt something stir inside her. A strange pull of memory. Her own childhood, a quiet kitchen, an old woman humming over an invisible pot when Lena's parents had died in a car accident. She remembered refusing food then, too, until that imaginary stew had coaxed her back to the table. So she said yes. The first thing she noticed when Mrs. Liang, the head housekeeper, opened the door was not the grandeur, but the absence of life. No smell of food, no warmth, just disinfectant and grief. The walls seemed to listen rather than breathe. "You'll start with the kitchen," Mrs. Liang told her. "But mostly we just need someone present." The girl won't speak. "Her father barely sleeps." Lena nodded, but her attention was already elsewhere. She could feel the weight of the house, the kind her grandmother used to describe, walls that ache. And somewhere upstairs, beyond the corridor lined with family portraits, she could almost hear a rhythm, the faint beep of a monitor, the shallow breath of a child trying not to exist. Her fingers brushed the ladle in her apron pocket. Its wood felt warm, as if carrying its own pulse. She was supposed to begin with cleaning. Instead, she climbed the stairs. At the end of the hall, a door stood slightly open. On it, in glitter marker, were the words, "Clara's Kingdom." Inside, Daniel Monroe sat slumped beside his daughter's bed, head in his hands. The little girl lay turned to the wall, a tangle of IV lines beside her, photos of a smiling woman taped above. "Sir," Lena's voice was careful, "I'm Lena Walker, the new maid." He looked up, startled, exhaustion hollowing his eyes. "You're early," he said. "We don't need," but before he could finish, Lena stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry. I know I should be downstairs, but I think I'm supposed to be here." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked at his daughter, at the small, motionless back, and whispered, "If you can get her to eat, you can stay forever." Lena didn't answer. She just drew the wooden ladle from her pocket and began to stir the air above the empty bedside table, tracing slow, silent circles as if over an invisible pot. The first time Clara noticed the movement, she thought it was a trick of the light, just a girl in a red uniform waving her hand in circles. But then came a faint hum, low and steady, like something old remembered. The tune wound through the room, soft enough not to frighten her. "What are you doing?" Clara's voice rasped out of days of silence. "Making stew," said Lena, still stirring air that held nothing. "But I can't remember the recipe on my own. Maybe you can help me." "There's nothing there," Clara said flatly. "Maybe not yet." Lena smiled. Good stews take a while to appear. The secret ingredient's always patience. For the first time in 2 weeks, a flicker passed across the girl's face, something like curiosity. She watched Lena's wrist move in gentle circles. Lena didn't ask her to eat. She didn't coax or plead. She simply kept stirring, letting the rhythm fill the room the way conversation used to. Her grandmother's words echoed inside her. "Feed the soul first." After a while, Clara whispered, "What kind of stew?" "The kind that remembers," Lena said. "It starts with stories instead of salt." Clara turned toward her, pillow creasing one side of her cheek. "That's stupid." "Maybe," Lena admitted. "But sometimes the stupid things are what save us." The hum changed key, soft minor notes rising and falling. Daniel, standing at the doorway, didn't interrupt. He was afraid that sound might stop if he moved. When Lena finally set the ladle down, the silence felt different. Not empty, expectant. The next morning, she was there again, sitting on the edge of the bed, humming over invisible steam. "Still missing the first ingredient," she said. "What is it?" Clara asked. "The story of who we're cooking for." Clara stared at her for a long time. "My mom," she said finally. "She likes strawberries." "And Sunday mornings," Lena nodded. "Then that's what we'll put in first, Sunday mornings and strawberries." She stirred the air again, and for the first time Clara sat up to watch. Steam drifted through the kitchen like a ghost made of sunlight. The pot hissed softly. The stew had turned a deep gold-brown color that shimmered when it moved. Lena lowered the heat and glanced at Clara, who was watching every ripple as if it might speak. "It's almost ready," Lena said. "But the stew needs one last thing before we taste it." "What thing?" Daniel asked quietly. "The invisible ingredient," Lena replied. Clara looked up. "You said that before. What is it?" Lena met her eyes. "Forgiveness. Not for anyone else. For ourselves." The words hung between them like fragile glass. Daniel stiffened, but she continued, voice steady. "This stew can't heal you if you're still angry at yourself for surviving." Clara blinked, tears threatening again. "How do you forgive yourself?" "You say it out loud," Lena said. "You let the words go into the pot, and you stir them till they stop shaking." She held out the wooden ladle. Clara hesitated, then took it. Small hands dwarfed by the worn handle. She stood on the stool, leaning over the steam. "I forgive myself," she whispered. Then a breath. Then more clearly, "I forgive myself for being alive when Mama isn't. I forgive myself for being hungry again." The kitchen went silent except for the slow circle of the ladle scraping against the pot. Daniel's throat closed. He reached for the ladle when Clara stopped. "My turn?" he asked, voice breaking. Lena nodded. He took it carefully, eyes on the shimmering surface. "I forgive myself," he said, "for not being home that morning, for not knowing how to help you, for thinking money could fix what love was supposed to." The sound that followed wasn't sobbing exactly. It was release, a deep breath pulled from somewhere near the heart. When the timer on the stove finally beeped, none of them moved. The smell filled the kitchen. Onions, thyme, salt, and something else they couldn't name. "It's ready," Lena whispered. She ladled the stew into 3 bowls, setting them on the counter. Clara stared at hers, golden broth shining beneath the light. "I don't know if I can," she said softly. "That's fine," Lena said. "Then just hold it. Sometimes holding is the first bite." Clara lifted the spoon anyway. Steam fogged her lashes. "Mom," she murmured to the air, "I'm going to eat this for both of us." The spoon touched her lips. The first taste hit like warmth moving through glass. Slow, startling, real. Her eyes widened. "It's good," she breathed. "It tastes like being held." Daniel pressed his hands against his mouth. A sound escaped him, half laughter, half weeping. Lena smiled, weary but bright. "Then we did it right," she said. They ate in silence, 3 souls circling one act of courage. No music, no miracles. Just the quiet miracle of staying. Evening poured through the windows, soft and amber, painting the kitchen in light the color of memory. The pot sat empty now, a few streaks of gold clinging to its sides. On the counter beside it, 3 spoons lay parallel, small, large, and worn, like a family rebuilt from fragments. Clara's head rested on her father's arm. She was still awake, tracing invisible circles on the marble with one finger. Each breath came easier than the last. Daniel kept glancing at her, as if afraid she might fade again if he looked away. Lena cleaned quietly, the movements of someone who understood that silence was sacred. When she finally spoke, it was almost to herself. "My grandmother used to say," she murmured, "once a house remembers laughter, it never forgets how to keep it." Daniel turned toward her. His eyes were red but lighter now, not empty, alive. "You did more than any doctor ever could." "I didn't heal her," Lena said softly. "She chose to live. I just reminded her how." Outside, leaves brushed against the windows, a soft autumn rustle. The world, it seemed, had started moving again. That night, Daniel canceled every remaining appointment, every meeting, every plan that didn't begin with his daughter's name. He sat beside her bed until she slept, and for the first time in months, he allowed himself to dream. 6 months later, the Monroe estate no longer echoed. It breathed. The kitchen had become its heart, a place of warmth and noise and the clatter of spoons. The polished ladle hung framed on the wall with an inscription beneath it. "We feed both the body and the memory." Every Sunday morning, Daniel and Clara cooked together. Some days it was French toast, some days stew. On the counter, Clara had taped a note in bright crayon letters. Mom would be proud. As for Lena Walker, she stayed. Not as a maid, but as something else entirely. A bridge between grief and the living. When the local paper asked Daniel about the miracle maid, he only smiled and said, "There was no miracle. There was just kindness served warm." Months later, Lena used her savings to open a small kitchen on the edge of Boston. The sign above the door read, "The Remembering Table. No menu, no prices." Just bowls of stew for whoever walked in. Grieving parents, lonely students, anyone who needed to taste hope again. Clara helped on weekends, tying her hair back with a red ribbon to match Lena's apron. She told visitors the rule that mattered most. You have to thank your ingredients, even the sad ones, especially the sad ones. And when someone asked if the stew really worked, she'd grin and say, "It doesn't fix you. It just reminds you that you're still here, and that's enough." On the first anniversary of Elena's death, Daniel and Clara returned home with Lena. The house smelled of thyme and cinnamon. In the golden evening light, Clara stirred the pot, her small hand gripping the old ladle. "What's the first ingredient, Daddy?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "The reason we're still together." "And the last?" Lena asked, standing beside them. Clara looked up, eyes bright as flame. "Love," she said. "But only if you share it." Steam rose again, carrying the scent of something ancient and new, the quiet proof that healing, once started, never really ends. The three of them stood in that kitchen, bound not by blood or grief anymore, but by the simple, enduring act of remembering.